Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm Izzy Greenberg. Welcome to Early Care Connection. Today we are joined by our resident panel of experts, Meryl Gay from the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance and Ava Bermudez-Zimmerman from Child Care for CT. A reminder to everyone to speak slowly for interpretation, and a big thank you to Sandra for helping us make this available to so many more people. A reminder that we will use the chat to communicate with each other or for technical difficulties, but to please use the Q&A if you have questions for the panelists. I guess, I would like to start today just by saying that it is our 5-year anniversary of hosting these calls weekly. I think that's remarkable. I don't think I've ever been part of something that was so consistent and continuous and robust and transformative. I remember being here with Meryl and Ava and Liz saying, oh my God, the world is shutting down. What the heck are childcare centers going to do? And we just ran one simple webinar and people said, we need more of that. And here we are 5 years later, still at it with a growing community, with so much more power, with so much more knowledge, with so much more connection. And it's really because, you all show up every week and you tell us what you need and you're doing the work. So I guess I wanted to congratulate everyone here because we have something that came out of a terrible situation, and we have really, as a community, transformed it into something wonderful. And I guess I just wanted to say, congratulations to my co-conspirators in this, and also mention Liz, who was here right at the beginning with us. And also to all of you who just keep showing up every week and make these calls as wonderful as they are. So I guess it's a happy anniversary to everyone. 5 years in and we're still at it. So we should all pat ourselves on the back and be proud of the work and the accomplishment and the unity and how far we've come. As we're going to hear today, child care, early childhood is the top of everyone's mind in this legislative session. And honestly, I think it's because of this group. I think it's because people are showing up. And I think folks at the state see the power in the numbers of all of you every week saying, I care about this and I'm not going to stop caring and I'm going to keep showing up. And I attribute a lot of the attention that we're getting to the dedication of all of you showing up here, showing up at the Capitol. So you'll hear we've got a lot of competing bills, some better than others, but the fact that our legislators, our state leaders are putting so much attention into childcare, to me, is a testament to what we've built here in some ways. And maybe we can't take all the credit, but I think we can take a lot of it. And I don't say me specifically, I say this community generally. So anyway, I guess we'll keep going. And I'm going to turn it over now, after all of that, to Meryl and Ava, who are going to tell you about a lot of these bills that are making their way through, what's good, what's bad, how we can support the best parts of these and hopefully end up with something in the end that really helps everyone. So I'm going to turn it over to Meryl first. Okay, Meryl, you're up.
Okay, well, the good news is we have the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President all prioritizing early childhood. The maybe not so good news is that they all have different approaches, and we need to try and navigate those different approaches and figure out what is it that we like and how do we get something we can live with into the final thing that passes the legislature. So I will go through a comparison of them, but let me just start off with the most recent of these is Senate Bill 1, which had new language dropped last Wednesday night, and we've all been scrambling to try and figure it out. Much like the governor's universal pre-K proposal, which if you just read the bill language, you'd be left scratching your head saying, okay, so how's this going to work? We all had the advantage of seeing Commissioner Bai's hour-long presentation about how she intended it to work to help fill in the holes. We haven't had that kind of similar presentation from anybody in the Senate leadership. to explain how they expect their proposal to work. I had a conversation with the Senate policy staffer where I got some sense of it, but I still have a lot of questions. So I will try and explain it as best I can. There will be a public hearing this Wednesday. It's in the Education Committee. It will be a long hearing. This bill includes a lot of other stuff besides early childhood. There are 54 sections, and only the first 12 of them relate to early childhood. But it is Senate Bill 1, which means it is the Senate leadership's top priority bill. And they clearly see it as an alternative to the governor's proposal. Their criticism of the governor's proposal is they don't think it ever reaches universal pre-K, that it subsidizes an expansion of the state-funded system, but never goes beyond that. The Senate leadership proposal, SB 1, would take the same $300 million that the governor's proposed to put into an endowment. They call it the Senate calls it a trust fund. And then each year after to take all of the unappropriated surplus funds and deposit it into that trust fund. So similar approaches there between the governor's proposal and Senate Bill 1. And then the differences start with how much money gets spent and how it gets spent. So in the governor's proposal, each year you can use 10% of what the fund has accumulated. In the Senate proposal, you can draw down the return, the average 2-year average of the returns on that. So, or the investment returns. That is different and probably less money than the governor's proposal. So it will mean less money coming out of the trust fund growing faster. Then when it talks about what are the priorities for how that money gets used, in the governor's proposal, it is strengthening and expanding the state-funded system. So increasing rates, increasing wages in the state-funded programs, and then opening the state-funded programs to include more providers, inviting new providers in. In the Senate proposal, they seem to use the old adage of other people's money, like let's maximize state dollars by supporting programs where there's other people putting money in. So in the first case, it's supporting pre-K in public schools because local school districts are putting in money to support the effort. And the second piece is TRISHARE, which some of you may remember, there was a law passed last year to create a pilot for a TRISHARE program where employers put in a third, the state puts in a third, and the parents put in a third. That isn't actually launched yet. It probably will start enrolling some kids sometime in the next few months. What SB 1 does is to change the equation from a third employers, a third state, a third employees to the employer puts in a third, and then the employee would pay 7% of their income and the state would make up the difference. So for a high income employee, the state would be putting in less. For a low income employee, the state would be putting in more. The big challenge, of course, with TRISHARE is how many employers really want to be shelling out $5,000 for an employee to put their kid into a preschool program. If they've got one kid, if they've got more than one kid, it could potentially be more than that. So, it's kind of the luck of the draw if you've got an employer willing to shell out a bunch of money. We'll see whether that actually goes forward. The next piece of it is an expansion, which is still a bit of a mystery to me as to how that expansion, what would expand and what would be allowable. It appears that the programs that could get expansion funded would be those public school programs and those tri-share programs. But that's something where I got to get some more questions answered. And then eventually the third phase of this, when the program has accumulated enough money to be able to fund it, would be to offer a subsidy for families who have children enrolled in pre-K kind of anywhere, where it would fund the difference between the tuition and 7% of the family's income. So a real big question on that is, what happens to the 17,000 kids in state-funded programs if there's no additional money going into state-funded programs, where the deal is I get a grant and I agree not to charge my families more than the sliding scale. So it's, when I questioned the Senate policy person about this, I was told, well, things will have to change and programs will have to be able to raise their tuition. It's like, but that's fundamentally different than the way the system works now. I also have questions about, what happens if a program says, well, we need to charge $30,000 in tuition, pay us the difference between 7% of what our parents' income is and that amount. Are there any safeguards to keep the state from getting ripped off by programs that want to just, sap the state for all they can get? It's really a big question as to how this would work. And it would really help if we had a better explanation of it before Wednesday when the hearing is. But in the meantime, what I'm suggesting is that all of us testify that, look, we're encouraged by the fact that Senate leadership is prioritizing this, but we have some real concerns about how this might work. And here are our concerns. And here's what's missing from this. What is missing from all of these proposals is infant toddler care, which we all know is the most expensive care to provide, what is least available, and what is most at jeopardy by a focus on preschool. If we tip the system towards preschool, particularly preschool in public schools, we end up with the rest of the system being sort of disrupted, and we lose infant toddler care, because in all but the wealthiest communities, programs cannot charge what it really costs to operate infant toddler care. They have to subsidize it with their preschoolers. And if we lose preschoolers to the public schools, then we undermine the system that provides the little amount of infant toddler care there is in the state. In wealthy communities where they can charge $20,000 to $25,000 for infant toddler seats, there will still be infant toddler seats, even if preschool seats go to the public schools. But that's not the case for most of the state. I have a comparison chart that I will try and share here. Do you want me to do that now, or do you want me to?
Whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Yep. Is it the advocacy kit or?
I have actually a chart that is part of the advocacy kit. I've been getting messages here from Vanessa, who's having.
I have the advocacy kit I can share.
Okay.
Also.
Yeah. Why don't you do that?
Okay.
So what I'm encouraging people to do is to sign up to testify on Wednesday. To basically offer testimony to explain what it is that we would like. We would like to have a system that supports infant toddler care, that makes childcare affordable for families, but also addresses the real serious problems in the childcare sector, which is low wages and the fact that programs are operating on a knife edge, and close to 3/4 of them have no financial reserves for any kind of unexpected expense. If we had a snap cold spot and pipes froze, or your furnace broke down, almost 3/4 of programs don't have any financial reserves to make those repairs. We have a lot of programs that, the fact that Care for Kids pays a month after the services have been delivered is a problem making payroll. And one thing I would say is that this SB 1 proposes a reimbursement system that would be even longer than Care for Kids reimbursement system when they eventually get to subsidizing things. Yeah, let me see if I can find that chart here. It's the problem of
I
having.
think it's also in that document. So we've got a couple of things to share. That testimony prep kit was put together by the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance. Inside it are fact sheets and other things. I'm also in just 1 minute going to share a link for like a simple testimony builder. So if you don't have, if you want somewhere to start, I guess it kind of walks you through it, and you can just hit submit. So we've got the thing the Early Childhood Alliance put together really is in-depth fact sheet, helps you really understand it. And actually there's going to be a testimony building workshop at 1:30 for those who are interested in learning how to do it on this particular bill. If you are not that invested or don't have the time for that, you can use the simple testimony builder. The one Meryl is doing a personal letter is always the absolute best. But I think that is unlikely that most people will do that. So we're also sharing this sort of easier way. So in just 1 minute, I'm going to share that with you as well. I have to grab that. And Meryl's going to share his chart.
I'm going to share my chart here. Okay, so this is linked in the testimony builder that is there in the chat. But so this is a comparison of 3 bills: the governor's UPK bill 5003 and SB 1. So the governor's proposal is to grow the Early Start program into a flagship high-quality state pre-K program and gradually grow it to serve more children by bringing in new providers. 5003 is really to take restricted money out from under the spending cap and use it to expand Care for Kids. And SB 1 is to gradually build a truly universal system. Now, the question is, in trying to do that truly universal system where every child can get subsidized pre-K, do you disrupt the system so much that you have unintended consequences? And that's what I fear. As much as I love the goal of getting us to the point where childcare, where pre-K is affordable for everybody, when I look at, for example, New Britain, which I have a lot of history in, what I found there was that there are about 1,400 kids who are preschool age, and there are about 1,116 pre-K slots in New Britain. Only 17 of them are not subsidized in one way or another. That is how children in a poor community like New Britain are getting preschool, and why 76% of kids starting kindergarten have had a preschool experience. All of those families would have been priced out of the market had there not been a state-funded system, the old school readiness and Head Start, well, school readiness, which is now Early Start, and Head Start, and the public schools pre-K programs. Without those, probably none of those kids would be going to preschool, because there are maybe a handful of children in New Britain whose parents could afford to pay the average cost of $295 a week for preschool. So that state subsidized system is really important for the 40% of kids in this state whose parents are below the ALICE threshold, who couldn't possibly afford market rate childcare. And I would say we ought to have a sort of underlying, sort of like the medical world, do no harm as an underlying bottom line here. But then, this hearing is an opportunity, while we have legislators considering the Senate's priority bill to talk about what is it that we really want to see in this system. We want to see a system where we address not only the affordability for parents, but also the viability of the industry, of the sector that provides the care. It means that staff have to be able to get paid better. And my understanding of what the Senate envisions this being is that when a program joins this new subsidy system, they would have to get accredited within 3 years, and they would have to pay their staff equivalent to what teachers with similar credentials are making in the public school system in their community. And then they would, figure that out, what that would cost and what they would need to raise tuition to. And then they could apply for reimbursement of the difference between what parents, what 7% of the parents' income is and that new tuition level. It's a completely different model than our current state-funded system, and potentially could then reach to all children. But when it would do that, because as I said, this is a slower spend rate than the governor's proposal, or certainly 5003, which, 5003 essentially says we take 100 million and we spend 90% of it next year. So it's a completely different approach. We clearly need some blend of all of these. The sector clearly has immediate issues of, Care for Kids rates need to go up. The rates paid to the state-funded programs need to go up. And we want to get to the point where we start being able to support more families to make sure that we really have all children getting a quality preschool experience.
Meryl, there's a question here. To clarify, is the governor's bill also known as HB 6867?
Yep.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
should actually probably put that in here. There we go.
Great.
So what I'm encouraging people to do is when you sign up to testify or you submit testimony, say that you're making comments. Don't say you're supporting or opposing it. And when
On SB1.
On SB1 for this hearing on
Wednesday.
And that start off by saying, look, we're really glad that we now have the governor, the Senate president, and the Speaker of the House all saying that early childhood needs to be a priority. But we need to make sure that that in trying to fix the system, we don't create unintended consequences. We don't put things too much into the public schools. We don't strand the state-funded system in a sort of slow death spiral. And that we get to the point where we can support more families with subsidy.
Right.
So we will have more on how to prepare testimony at 1:30. And if you are able to think about writing sort of unique testimony, how this might affect your program, there are a couple of things you might do. You might call your school district and ask to talk to someone in the personnel office, and what is it that a public school starting teacher with a bachelor's degree earns there. How much do paraprofessionals earn roughly? Tell them that you're trying to prepare testimony for some legislation, and just see if you can get some numbers. But to think then about, okay, what would this do to what would tuition need to be? And to think about, just like, from your perspective, what would it mean if the public pre-K programs were free? And it was going to be a while before you saw any additional subsidy. and if you offer infant toddler care, what it would mean if you couldn't fill your preschool programs as children fled to free public school pre-K.
Right.
I'll,
Thanks, Meryl.
we'll go ahead and walk people through, if that's okay, on how to sign up and what to expect when you sign up. So I'm going to share my screen really
Yep.
quickly.
And Vanessa, could you also, we're having a request to share the link to the testimony builder, the testimony prep session this afternoon. Can you please pop that into the chat? Thanks.
So just a reminder that if anyone shares this link, or if you use this link yourself, the difference between using the Childcare for CT link to testify versus just the toolkit is that you are assigned someone for live testimony, be it Zoom or in person. You're assigned someone from our team to remind you, help you create and draft your testimony, basically hold your hand through the process. So we ask all of you that if you're going to submit written testimony and you want to do it from the heart, check out the Childcare the Alliance's toolkit, which they put a lot of time. Shout out to Vanessa, who did a phenomenal job with Meryl on creating that in very short notice. But if you are inclined to testify in person this Wednesday or via Zoom for this Wednesday and share your story, then please use the link that Izzy put down. The short way to know which is which is it says every action. And when you look at it, it looks exactly like what you see on the screen right now. So again, we assign you someone, a staffer, to just walk you through the process and make sure that we remind you, we give you a 1 hour warning, a 30-minute warning, and then a 10-minute warning before you are called up to testify. As many of you know, the day that you testify is pretty hectic. Sometimes we think there's going to be 3 hours before you testify, but then it turns into 6 hours. So having someone have your back and letting you know what's actually going on, hopefully is helpful. So that way you can continue working, go about your day, pick up your own children, have a life, and then we're here having your back, letting you know when it's your turn to testify. So when you click on that every action link to submit your testimony, we have some simple instructions. If you do decide to go in person to testify, we don't want to create any hardship. So we do have gas cards available to those who need it, for those who are making the trip to Hartford to go ahead and testify. This information will also be available in Spanish for those of you who are Spanish speakers. The sign up to testify in person or by Zoom is due tomorrow. The state requires you to have your name in by 3 o'clock tomorrow in their link. But if you use this form, our cutoff is at 2:30. So we have enough time to submit your name on your behalf. It's pretty simple. Your basic information, first name, last name, your postal code, city, your email, your mobile number, so that way we can call and remind you when your turn is up for testifying and be in touch to help you navigate the system. And then we just want some basic information. Are you an advocate? Are you a childcare provider? Are you a parent? If you're a childcare workforce, this includes owners, directors, associate directors, head teachers, nutritionists, basically anyone at all who works in a childcare setting qualifies for childcare workforce. And then the super important part, how will you sign up to testify? Do you want to testify in Zoom or in person? Maybe you're not ready and you want to do something else and just show up. And that's okay too. If you just want to show up and, wear a Fixed Childcare t-shirt and sit behind those testifying, it's really helpful because all the hearings are recorded And that way, having a group of people with the fixed childcare t-shirts behind them, rooting for them, also shows up in the camera, reminds legislators that childcare is here in full force and we are not to be ignored. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we have authorization to submit your comment on your behalf so that we know exactly where people stand when it comes to submitting comments. So the form's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. I'll stop sharing my screen. The other detail I think is worth adding is when we go to testify, even though this bill is new and there's a lot of ebbs and flows, you know, it's a maze. It's still important to highlight your story. So I know all of you have heard us many times say, share your story matters. This is no different. It really does matter. If you've shared your story before, you can share it again. If you shared maybe a piece of that story and you have another version you want to share, that's also helpful. We need to get across to legislators, like Meryl mentioned, the focus on infant care, the focus on why the workforce matters, why it matters to have a holistic approach, something that helps everyone and not just pieces of the puzzle, right? We're not looking for Band-Aids. We're not looking for a couple coins here, a couple dimes or pennies. We are looking for real investment to the full system, so that way the providers, the owner operators, and the parents can come out of this feeling like there's a victory for everyone. And if they're only doing it for one piece, if they're only doing it for pre-K, or if they're only helping reduce the cost of care for parents, that is not a victory for the system. We'll continuously be in this spiral of crisis. So I'll pass it back to Izzy.
Can I, real quick, I'm just gonna share my screen because we actually don't have, Ava was not 100% accurate on that. We actually don't have this available in Spanish as a separate link. It gets a little confusing. And so the way that we're encouraging folks to do it is go to Google Translate, click right here, websites. You put the link in there, and then it takes you to the Spanish version of it. You can change this to any language that you want. If you prefer any of these, there's so many. So that this will guide you through the same exact thing she just showed you, but it's easier because we can use the same form. And so that is how we're encouraging folks to do that. Just wanted to clarify that. And I think that it's a little confusing because we've shared a lot of links here. We've got Meryl and the Early Childhood Alliance are giving you the facts you need to write a great testimony, a 1:30 workshop to teach you how to do it again, all of the resources, the link to sign yourself up is in there. And the thing that is shared by Childcare for CT is a kind of just simple one. If you don't have time to put into the full effort this time, you can just walk yourself through. Childcare for CT staff will sign you up. We'll submit your testimony for you. And it probably takes 2 minutes. Of course, you can be as thoughtful as you'd like and you can modify that letter. But if you don't have time for it, the only thing it's asking you to modify is it says like, I'm a parent, provider, community member, pick the one that you are. And that's all there is to that. Meryl, I think this was for you, but there's a question here. Actually, it's for both of you. Has OEC responded to the bill? If so, what is their priority? Universal pre-K or keeping the industry viable?
Well, OEC, the commissioner works for the governor. And so once there is a governor's position on something, that becomes OEC's position. It doesn't matter how much Commissioner Bai feels strongly about something. There is you fall in line and support your governor. So the governor has a universal pre-K proposal that OEC was very involved in developing, and that's going to be what they're going to testify for. Anything else, they will testify that this isn't, within the governor's budget, and therefore it's not something they're supporting. And that, I know many of you have known Commissioner Bai for many years, and it feels like weird. Why isn't she supporting this? Well, it's because, it's the position that she's in. So that's just something we all need to understand. I do want to talk about a couple of other things. The news out of DC is they passed a continuing resolution. That means that there won't be a government shutdown. We don't have to worry about Head Start programs not getting funded during a shutdown, that sort of stuff. But that sets the stage, sort of clears the deck for the big fight about next year's budget, which will be done through budget reconciliation, which means that they will not need to have the supermajority in the Senate, and they can do it with a simple majority of senators. That means that it's much more likely that the majority party can ram through what it is they're trying to do. And right now that looks like some big cuts to domestic funding, domestic programs, so that they can increase military funding and pass along huge tax breaks to the super wealthy and corporations. So the other news has been that we have a lot more news in the last weekend about immigration enforcement, with the beginnings of the big questions whether or not the Trump administration will follow court orders. There were court orders this weekend that were violated in deporting people who had not had any kind of court hearing. There was a Brown University professor, kidney transplant specialist, who, when returning from Lebanon with a valid visa, was deported back to Lebanon. And that all raises questions about what is to come with immigration enforcement here. The Alliance is hosting a third session with an immigration lawyer for childcare programs. It will be tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And I will post the link in here to register for that. It's from 6 to 8. And
I can post it for you.
yeah, please do, because what I had pasted in was not it. So that is available for anybody who wants to come see that. I will just warn you that it is an information session. It's not, this lawyer does not represent you. She can't give you specific advice about your unique situation. She can give general advice about things and suggestions on good practices and what kinds of things you should think about. But to the extent that there are people in the industry who are not documented or may have questionable legal status in this country, as well as all of the families who are may have a parent who is not documented, all of those kinds of things are creating a huge amount of fear within the immigrant community.
Is this meeting open to anyone? And do you have to be an Alliance member?
We've opened this meeting to everybody.
And is there a registration limit?
No, because it's online. There's no limit.
Okay, great. All right, so let's see, there's one more question here. From Donna, with leadership invested in early childhood, but such different approaches, do you know if they would be willing to negotiate together with advocates for the best outcomes?
Well, there will clearly be negotiation. Whether there'll be any advocates in the room is questionable. So I think we need to make our case ahead of time and make sure that we've got as many people who have influence on those who will be in the room to be pushing for what we would like to see.
Okay, I think that's it. Any other stuff we need to go over today?
Do we know what we're doing next week? Do we have?
You know what? No,
Okay.
I don't think that's confirmed.
So
We sometimes have like 6 weeks confirmed out, and sometimes things change quickly.
yeah. So we are always open to suggestions of topics for these Monday calls. And if you've got a suggestion or a burning question, please drop us a email at info@earlycareconnection.org.
Yep. Yep. All right. So listen, folks, we've got like 250 people who are on this today. If each of you did either the amazing heartfelt approach or the simple 2-minute approach, it would make a big difference. So I'm going to share those links one more time before we jump off, and you can do it either way you'd like. Hopefully we'll get the education committee flooded with concerns and comments. So that's the hope. All right, here we go. So the SB1 testimony prep kit from the Early Childhood Alliance, the testimony builder, and the sign up to testify is that every action. Again, you can, for really any website, you can go to Google Translate, hit website, and it'll translate for you. So that is a great way to do things.
And if you've got questions about this and you want to, I'm going to be trying to get some more information before the testimony workshop at 1:30. So if you have specific questions you'd like me to try and get an answer to, just shoot me an email. I just stuck my email in there into the chat.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Meryl. Thanks, Ava. Thanks, Sandra. Thank you to all of you who are here today. And go take your somewhere between 5 and 30 minutes to do that at some point today. I think the actually the sign up to testify closes tomorrow at
3 p.m.
2:30. 2:30 if you're using the link we saved, 3 o'clock if you're doing it yourself. Either one's fine. So just remember that you needed to sign up before then. Okay. Ava, did you have something else you needed to join in on? Okay, hold on. Let me take you out of here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I have one other reminder, and sorry for those who are hearing me in Spanish. I unmuted and I was still in Spanish, so apologies for that confusion. This Wednesday, Childcare for CT is having their monthly community meeting. I know that this Wednesday is also the hearing, so it's a busy day, but we are still meeting to talk about what's coming up. We'll give some updates about session as well, but to avoid a repeat for any of you who do join those monthly meetings, I know last month we had, I think, over 400 people on that call going through the UPK plan. This month we're focusing on having conversations that will lead us to the May 7th day of action, as well as legislative conversations of how to get from here to there. You know, how do we make the most of the remaining 3 months of session. So please jump on. These are opportunities to chime in, give us creative ideas together to build that momentum between now and the end of session, which is June 4th. And please, if you have parents who are engaged or asking questions, this is an opportunity for them to join and have these types of conversations on these Monday calls. This community is really focused on the workers, right? Owner operators, directors, all of you are in the thicket of the early care conversation. You know so much more than the everyday person. The community meeting on Wednesday is a window to see what other people who are not in this conversation constantly, what they're thinking about. Do they understand the sacrifices that you're doing and that you're putting in? If you have that parent who, you know, just doesn't get it and doesn't understand how hard you work, send them to the community meeting and they'll get some perspective. You know, these conversations, sharing the stories with each other also reminds us to stay humble in this fight and know that we're in it together.
All right, just a reminder that this recording will be posted within 24 hours. The links do make it in the description in the chat file, as well as the link to the Spanish audio. And so you can listen in Spanish. You can get the chat file with all of the links if you don't save these. Okay, that's it. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Hopefully we'll see some of you on Wednesday at the public hearing, and we'll see your letters coming through. Have a wonderful week. Oh. flyer for the May 7th. I'm just seeing the flyer for the May 7th day of action. There is one. I can stick it in the chat if you're still here, whoever asked that question. But we can share that next week as well. You know what? I'll share it next week. We'll make it easier. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.